Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Well, our speaker today is Ryuko Laura Burges. Laura co-founded the Sangha in Recovery program at the San Francisco Zen Center and is the teacher at Lenox House Meditation Group in Oakland. She is a lay entrusted dharma teacher in the SotoZen tradition and leads retreats at different practice centers around Northern California. She is a teacher of children, and I think that includes Dharma teaching for children. And she has a children's book coming out called Monkeys in the Bodhi Tree, will be published by Shambhala Press in 2022. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Joe, and it's really great to be with you all again. Well, there's a lot of talk right now about getting back to normal. And I hope when we get back to normal, we won't just pick up where we left off with our normal greed, hate, and delusion. But I think there is a little bit of light shining through the darkness we've all been through together. And I think it was historic that our president recently in a speech mentioned trans youth and that trans youth he has their back. I mean, at the same time, there are, prejudicial laws, but I hope there'll be lawsuits about those. I think during the past year, we've learned something about our profound interconnection with one another and with the entire planet, and what it feels like to pull back from our normal activities and take some time for silence and solitude and reflection. I don't know about you, but there are quite a few family events and social get-togethers that I've really loved having a good excuse to not attend. And maybe during this time, you've gotten in touch with what's really important to you. I think for those of us who have a seeking nature, there's been many jewels in this time. One of the things that I like to state as a vow or intention is to not go back to the kind of addictive busyness that's so prevalent in our culture. I want to share a Zen story with you from the 21st case of the Book of Serenity, translated by Thomas Cleary. And this is one of those puzzling Zen koans that I was introduced to very early in my Buddhist practice. As Yunyan was sweeping the ground, Dao Wu said, "Too busy." Yunyan says, there is one who is not busy. This was one of those Zen stories that I heard years ago during my monastic training at Tassajara. One of the stories that once I heard it, even though it didn't make much sense to me at the time, it has continued to arise spontaneously like a flash in the midst of my modern life. Who is the one that Yunyan speaks of, the one who is not busy? And can we get in touch with that one who is not busy? These quirky Zen stories are there to help us in a way that's really beyond our intellectual understanding, outside of our conventional concepts. This story tells me that in the midst of our busyness, we can sense within us this one who is not busy, this compassionate witness that's always with us if we can be quiet and still enough to hear it. Zen practice encourages us to merge with our activity, not in some lofty, idealistic way, but in our everyday lives. Yunyan is sweeping. This is a classic Zen activity. You'll often see brush strokes of a Zen monk sweeping. When we're completely immersed in our activity, there is no busyness. There's just sweeping. There's a kind of ease and joy that I found in monastic practice where we really focus on, there's a Zen phrase, chopping wood, carrying water. A kind of ease and joy in just entering right here and being aligned with our real life, which is nowhere, if not here, right now. This strange, disorienting year of shutdown has given this teaching new meaning for me. During this time, I think many of us have had a chance to get a sense of elemental life, a chance to limit our exposure to the world, limiting social engagement. Maybe you've cleaned out that storage area you've been meaning to get around to. And, finding joy in activities at home, like cooking and being with those closest to us. Things that at one time we might have enjoyed, but let go of because of other commitments and responsibilities and because of our chronic busyness. This is such a part of our American culture. I think when we have this sense of being at one with our activity, there's a kind of sense of freedom from the bondage of self and a respite from the pressure of busyness. Sometimes we feel this pressure comes from outside of ourselves, but sometimes it's a pressure that we inflict on ourselves. Before our self-imposed quarantine, many of us juggled work, social and family life, serving on committees and boards, shopping, trying to find a time to be a good, citizen, community service, caring for young people or for the elderly, aging parents. And there can be an addictive quality to this kind of busyness. I hope that as things start to open up, that we can remember to treasure quiet times and solitude and continue to examine our addiction to busyness as we become more busy again. I looked up addiction in the dictionary, and the definition of addiction is pretty benign. The dictionary says to be addicted means to devote or give oneself habitually or compulsively. Well, as a recovering alcoholic, I'd have to add that to be addicted is also to continue to this giving over of oneself despite negative results. When we find ourselves doing something over and over again with negative results, we have to ask ourselves, why? What am I getting out of this behavior? So this phrase, to give of oneself, we want to give of ourselves to those we love, to our practice, to our community. But we all know that to give oneself to some kind of destructive obsession isn't healthy. And I think that busyness is practically a requirement in our culture, in our American culture. If we aren't busy, who are we? I think we associate busyness with being productive, with being popular. And I really think it's dangerous to think that our self-worth as a human being depends on how productive we are. As a teacher, I was always multitasking, cutting out triangles while watching Netflix. I mean, I always had more work than I could fit into one day. And a teaching for me, since I'm still mentoring other teachers, but I'm not in the classroom every single day, is to come back to this practice of just doing one thing at a time. I think we can ask ourselves, if we're being busy, just to avoid being, just being. And what are the negative results of our compulsive busyness? I think a lot of us have noticed how the chronic use of cell phones has eroded our quality of life. I know when I finally broke down and got a cell phone, I said, I'm just going to use this during emergencies. And then my definition of an emergency really changed very, very, very quickly. Cell phones take away from our attention to what we're doing right now and our attention to the person in front of us. When I started seeing parents at my school walking down the hallway looking at their cell phones, I thought, they're missing an opportunity to gaze at a child who is so hungry for attention. We've all seen people at tables at restaurants where each person at the table is staring at their little screen. And I think when we look carefully at busyness, we can see how it makes us less careful, less patient, more irritable, more prone to anger. You see this in when we're driving. If someone cuts us off, that's a huge affront to our sovereignty as a human being. Busyness can erode our integrity and even edge us into a state of constant panic and dread and stress. How do we translate the practice of non-busyness into everyday life as we get back to being more busy again? And I think this is especially true for those of us in Buddhist practice who are transplanting an Eastern way of thinking and being into a Western culture where being busy is just part of American life. I know many of you are familiar with the very refreshing teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk and peace activist. One of my favorite quotes of his is, "If we are peaceful, if we are happy, we can blossom like a flower, and everyone in our family, our entire society will benefit from our peace." I think we might have this niggling thought, why should I have this intention towards happiness and peace when so much of the world is suffering? But I think if we think in terms of cultivating peace and happiness within ourselves as an offering to the world, that's a very different thing. And I think we can be subversive agents of peace right in the middle of our very crazy and busy society. A student of Thich Nhat Hanh's, who was his assistant for some time, told me about walking down the streets of Manhattan with Thich Nhat Hanh, who would walk very, very slowly. And if you can picture, and if you've been to Manhattan or you can imagine them, this constant flow of traffic on the sidewalk. I mean, this engendered so much anger from other people on the sidewalk that Thich Nhat Hanh was walking so slowly. And it caused so much attention, they might have well been stark naked walking down the street, created quite a stir. Given the demands most of us face, we'll probably continue to be busy, but practice reminds us that even in the midst of our busyness, there is one who is not busy. And the crazier our world gets, the more I treasure the simplicity, the refuge, and the serenity and tranquility of meditation, a kind of oasis in the midst of a very busy world. So I want to consider some antidotes to our obsessive busyness, and I'm sure you have some as well. We could talk about them later. First, as I just said, our meditation practice is an antidote to the habitual busyness that's so celebrated by our culture. It's really a revolutionary act to just sit still for half an hour and not do anything. And of course, when we're not doing anything, we're also not creating any mischief. The practice of sitting down in the midst of our life and simply being alive, feeling our breath as it rises and falls, feeling conscious contact with the place where we find ourselves. And I think when we sit still like this, we notice this quiet witness within, observing our breath. We can't do this until we consciously make a space for it in our lives. And I do hope that in addition to sitting with one another every Sunday, that you've carved out a place for quiet sitting in your everyday life. A second thing is we can come back to our breath during the day. We always have time for taking 3 deep breaths. You can do that at a meeting, at a stoplight, and you can even choose something as a reminder. Whenever I hear a siren, I take 3 deep breaths, because a siren means someone's in trouble, and I can send loving kindness to that person through my breath. We might not always have time to sit for long periods of time, but we always have time for 3 deep breaths. In fact, let's just take 3 deep breaths together right now. I wove this practice of taking 3 deep breaths into my classroom, and the kids are kind of embarrassed and silly about it at first, and then they really love that silence. And many of them took those 3 deep breaths back home. Some of them got a mindfulness bell for their home, and some of them would tell me, when my parents start fighting, I ring the bell and we take 3 deep breaths. That's being a revolutionary agent of change. A third thing I think we can all do is to have the intention of cultivating a sense of spaciousness in our everyday life, even within a very busy day. During my busy days as a teacher, when I'd have dozens of interactions with people every day, I would simply remind myself, I would literally say this to myself internally: I have all the time that I need. I have all the time that I need. And you can tell yourself this when you feel that edge creeping into your thinking. A fourth thing is we can consciously walk more slowly during our day. Maybe not as slowly as Thich Nhat Hanh, but to walk slowly enough so that we can see what's around us, meet each person and event wholeheartedly, and even I would suggest being conscious of the way your feet feel on the ground. I try to walk in Golden Gate Park every day now, and I make an effort to get off the trail. Just to get off the concrete and put my feet on the ground. And I have a sense that it's important for our minds and bodies to have our feet on the ground, literally on the ground, more often than we let ourselves do that. A fifth thing is that we can leave a little earlier to get where we're going instead of rushing. Now, I was somebody who was chronically late in a very passive-aggressive way for much of my life. And someone told me, this was so healing, that it's hard to be on time. It's hard to be exactly on time, but you can be a little bit early. It's easy to be early. And this also increases our sense of having spaciousness in our lives if we do that for ourselves. 6, we can build peaceful moments into our day. I am so tickled. I recently bought an 88-key Yamaha keyboard for myself. I haven't had a piano in my apartment so as not to aggravate my neighbors, but I used to be able to play the piano at my school. And this keyboard, it feels and sounds exactly like a piano, but I have headphones. And so I'm not a great pianist, but I'm returning to all those simple piano songs from my childhood. And it's been so refreshing to return to piano and also to drawing. I recently co-taught a class on Zen and drawing. When we look at something and try to draw it, even unskillfully, it really brings us back to the present moment. That's been a wonderful practice for me to return to. Another thing we can do is schedule a day of doing nothing. This used to be called a Sabbath. You can make a Sabbath for yourself. Now, you really have to plan this. It can't happen by accident. You have to maybe turn off your phone, turn off your screens. You might nap a lot or cook or read or stare out the window play with your pets, take a walk in the park, a day of real rest for yourselves. Exercising is another great way to come back to ourselves, not out of any sense of virtue or to have a six-pack abs, but just to do something that's sensual and pleasurable in itself. One of my favorite things to do to increase a sense of ease is to be around trees. There's so much research coming out now about the intelligence of trees and how they communicate with one another under the ground and through the air. Well, it looks like they're doing absolutely nothing, but a tree is such a wonderful teacher of stability and generosity. They just grow where they're planted and give back so much shade and fruit and medicine, and most importantly, the air we breathe. We literally could not be on this planet without trees. And, take a moment to look up at the trees when you walk, and that will increase your sense of peace and ease. And the 10th thing I'd like to share is to stop talking about how busy and stressed out we are. When somebody asks us how we are and we say, oh, I'm so busy, I'm just so stressed. Every time we say that, we deepen that neurological pathway in our brain. So when you feel tempted to say how busy and stressed out you are, take 3 breaths with your friend, or say you have all the time that you need. We need to change that attitude of perpetual busyness. I want to share with you this poem, which I think will help sustain me as I begin to return to normal life, whatever that is. And this is by the wonderful gay Greek poet, C.P. Cavafy. It's called As Much As You Can. Even if you can't shape your life the way you want, at least try as much as you can not to cheapen it totally by too much contact with the world and all its traffic and talk. Don't degrade it by dragging it along, taking it around and exposing it so often to the daily silliness of meetings and parties until it comes to seem unbearable, no longer your own. And that's C.P. Cavafy, C-A-V-A-F-Y. Wonderful, wonderful Greek poet. Let's take 3 breaths together. Well, I have a little more I'd like to add before we have our discussion. I think a lot of us long for a simpler way of life and have had a taste of that during the shutdown. Part of this practice can be just remembering to return to the present moment, to just sweep when we're sweeping, and when we're cutting a carrot, just cutting a carrot. The simplicity of doing the next right thing, the thing that's right in front of us. My first Buddhist teacher told me that if you feel depressed, if you feel overwhelmed, do the dishes. In other words, just do something simple that's right in front of you that needs to be done that will improve your environment, that a physical activity that will change the way you feel. Even in a subtle way, and change our minds as well. I notice a lot of people getting rid of excess things these days, rethinking their living space and enjoying the simplicity of gardening, of reading, of home cooking. These are all things that invite us to slow down and enjoy our life more deeply, and to take a break from running around like crazy and thinking that our worth as a human being depends on how productive we are at every moment. We might have this sense, I sometimes do, of just spending too much time in my head, worrying about the future, worrying about people I care about, being discouraged about our country and the direction it sometimes seems to be going in. Some of the things that have come up to light, although that's the only way they can ever be improved. So another antidote to this kind of mental busyness is just to turn towards the present moment and take care of what's right in front of us. Since I retired from teaching kids, I've been writing children's books for Shambhala Publishing, which has been such a nice way for me to be in touch with my love for children and what I've learned from being with them for half my life. I was with my daughter yesterday, and when she was 8 years old, then that's the age of the kids that I taught. She was walking along a path at Tassajara. We used to go there during the summer, and I would cook for the guests during the summertime at Tassajara. And the practice leader at Tassajara ran into Nova and said, "Hi, Nova, how's it going?" She stopped and said, "So little time, so much to complain about." She was 8 at the time. So kids have always given me a laugh and helped me look more close. My daughter has always helped me look a lot more closely at myself. It was a challenge and a koan and a joy to write a book about Zen for children, which I titled Tigers and Teacups, Zen Stories, Poems, and Practices for Kids and Their Families. I don't know if Shambhala will stick with that title. It's being illustrated by a wonderful Japanese-American artist, and it won't be out for quite a while. But when I was invited to write this book, I thought at first it might not be a great idea because we don't indoctrinate kids into Buddhism. They don't meditate with us at the crack of dawn. And, we certainly don't expect them to take the Buddhist precepts or subscribe to some particular set of beliefs. But we do include kids in the silence at the beginning of meals, and they celebrate the changing seasons with us in the Buddha Hall. Many of us have altars in our homes that kids participate with. They might find a beautiful leaf or stone or shell to put on the altar. We have photographs of loved ones who've died. So I just submitted my manuscript with stories that will appeal to kids and with activities for them to do. And one of the chapters is about taking care of things. And if you'll indulge me, I thought it might be kind of fun to share this with you as we think about our own obsessive busyness and the way we scatter our energy, just spreading it all over the place with too much stuff and too much to worry about. Sure, some of you know the book Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. It came out in the 50s. It was one of the very early books about Zen Buddhism that came to America. And I'm retelling this classic story from that book for kids. This is what I say to kids at the beginning. An important part of Zen is learning how to take care of things. The things we use every day take good care of us, and we should take good care of them. A good cook takes care of his knives because he couldn't prepare food without their help. A good carpenter takes care of her tools because she couldn't build things without their help. See the gender change there? Cooks and carpenters keep their knives and tools clean and put them back in the same place each time as they use them so they're there when they need them again. There's a saying in Zen, chop wood, carry water, which means every day, pay attention to what you're doing and take care of things. In this story, a young monk enters the temple. This story is called Wash Your Bowl. There was a young man who longed to enter the monastery so that he could practice Zen. He'd heard tales of the great Zen masters, and he wanted to be just like them, to be able to sit still with a calm mind and to grow in his knowledge and compassion. He set off with just the clothes on his back and made his way up into the high mountains. The crooked path led him to a Zen temple, and he sat outside for 3 days facing a wall, hoping that the master would notice him and let him practice there. On the evening of the 3rd day, Master Joshu silently slid open the wooden door of the temple and invited the young monk to enter. It happened to be time for the evening meal, So the young man slipped off his shoes and put them neatly on the shoe rack, entered the zendo, sat down, and silently ate a bowl of rice porridge with the other monks. When he was done, he approached the master and said, "I've just entered the monastery. Will you teach me?" Joshu answered, "Have you eaten your rice porridge?" The young monk answered, "Yes, master, I have eaten." Joshu said, "Then you had better wash your bowl." At that moment, the young monk was enlightened. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And I would really love to hear about what this line of thinking and speaking might have sparked in you. How do you find ease and joy in the midst of your necessary busyness? You know, none of us would have helped for this terrible global pandemic and all the loss and grief that it's caused. But is there something that you've learned or enjoyed during this time that might have surprised you, something that you want to say out loud to help you keep this intention of continuing with it as things begin to open up around us? So whatever came up for you or whatever you're practicing with right now in your life, it's helpful to say it out loud. So thank you again for your listening. And I'd like to dedicate this talk today to a friend of mine who I'm acknowledging a year of his suicide. So let's hear from Tom.
Thank you very much for your uplifting talk. It seems like things are lifting now. I just got back from a month in Texas helping my cousin with a project of hers. And I too bought an 88 key electronic piano a month ago, and I didn't even take it out of the box, but I had to leave for this job, and so I came back to it, and it was in the box, and I was very excited about that. And it was just because I heard a wonderful piece of music from the soundtrack of the old movie Diva by Vladimir Kozma, and I just wanted to be able to play that piece. And then out came the incentive checks, and I thought, well, this is a good thing to spend this on. And I just think my little brother just lost his wife to breast cancer, and I'm going to go up there in the Washington State San Juans to spend the better part of the summer with him. I'm retired and he's retired, and I'm thinking of just maybe taking the keyboard with me and having that be a simple thing that I can bring to the process that he's going through. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I'll let others talk.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much. Grisha, hi.
Others were before me. Christian. I don't know why my hand went to the top.
Okay, Christian. I'm calling you in the order I see.
Okay.
Christian.
Oh. Thanks, Grisha. Yeah, Laura, real quick, I just want to thank you very much for your talk. It was for me, it was very heartfelt and supportive. And I really appreciate a reminder to do what's right in front of you. And I think, of course, with intention and with love. And I think that's a really good piece of advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christian. Grisha.
Laura, thank you. It's always great to see you, and we have that teacher bond. I can say I'm a kindergarten teacher, and you really know what that means. And it's really,
school is really destroyed right now. Like I'm teaching 10 kids on Zoom and 11 in the room at the same time, and I can't be present with either one of them. So it's really like, it's racking my Buddhist brain. I have so much trouble being present. And I was really complaining. I was so grateful for your mantras because I can always take 3 deep breaths, but I have all the time I need. I don't, it's like, it feels like a big lie right now, but you know, it's deeply true. But one thing that this is one thing that I feel like, you know, I get up every morning and I do 5 lines of cortisol, you know, before I get out of bed. And so one thing that COVID's done is like to remind me to take some breaths and like really get in touch with a minute, like at least just find a minute. And so with the kids, you know, like our schedule is so crazy. I mean, they get a 15-minute recess, and, you know, with little ones, it takes 15 minutes to line them up and get them outside. So it's like, hurry up and go, hurry up, back, hurry, go. It's just like a crazy day. And I get 30 minutes, period, to eat lunch, go to the bathroom and do everything. And so, I'm really trying to like stop and just find some joy in one moment, you know, and get the kids to do that too. Like, when we draw together, we draw animals together. That's when the hush falls over the room. I really like your advice about drawing, and it just really takes you into the moment. And I just bought watercolors and started doing watercoloring, even though I'm no artist, but, it really it brings me down. It lowers the cortisol levels. And, so I just loved your list, and I just wanted to connect with you and say I appreciate it. And please, everyone, send metta to the children right now, because school is really, I don't know what, I think this COVID year is going to have a really intense impact on children, especially children of color and low-income kids who don't have resources. They've just missed a year of education and socialization, which means they're going to go into next year, you know, way behind. Anyway, thank you.
Grisha, thank you so much. And I just have to say, I admire just the heroic efforts teachers have had to make. I'm mentoring some really new teachers right now, and they've really been thrown in the deep end, having to be a lot more responsible than they usually would be as teaching assistants. And my heart goes out to you and to all those kids. So we'll remember you in our metta. Thank you for sharing. Chris.
Thank you, Laura. I lived at the Zen Center for a number of years on and off, and I never got a chance to talk to you, but I know you had such an effect and offered out such help to the center with your practice. So I just want to honor that. And I'm really happy to have heard this discussion.
Thank you.
This talk by you. You've offered out enough remedies in this talk for the whole next year. In fact, this springtime is being just sort of an opening and rebirth after this year of sort of living in my cave of snow here. I mentioned earlier that I live in the West Portal, so I've taken quite a lot of walks in all directions getting out of this cave. I work as a nurse online. I do a lot of advice, so it causes tension, certainly, especially during this period of time. And I've spent not only a lot of time walking underneath trees. St. Francis Wood is just gorgeous. So there's such beautiful stuff done there. And no one in the street, so it's very, very safe. But I've ended up at the Commodore Sloat Children's Playfield, and I've had the whole playfield to myself pretty much this whole past year, except for the few little kids that would come through and maybe go down a slide or swing on the swings. And I started capturing those moments of joy that the children would be offering out, or seeing a dog maybe barking at a leaf or something, a puppy or something, and really taking that on to really sort of increase my mudita and the practice of joy. And then also peeking in all the different classrooms and seeing all the children's projects and all the gardens and the hopscotch. There's actually a labyrinth to walk there. I walked it many times this year. So it's just been a delight. I'm kind of concerned now. I actually went back to the school, and now it's closed because the kids are there. They're having some opening in the programs. And I was a little miffed, like my playground's gone, but, and I'm feeling a little like nervous, thinking that maybe now I'm like this lurking pederast or something around watching these children, but I'm going to take that in step by step. But, and so to kind of tie this all in, James Baraz recently talked to the Sangha about a month ago, and I pulled out his book of joy. Actually, I brought it out right here, and I looked at this book maybe a decade ago when it first came out. And I know you taught a class related to this book at the Zen Center, and I would occasionally from the kitchen kind of listen in through the doors, and I've really just found this now in this new springtime and this rebirth of sort of really looking for those moments to incline my mind to joy. I mean, this whole 4 years of Trump has been just cut after slash after burn. It sort of struck me really deeply on a deep level of being this kind of good Girl Scout, Cub Scout, like at fourth grade, learning about social studies and sort of a respect for democracy and respect for others. And it was just getting destroyed and left and right on a really deep level. So I don't know what I just asked, what I'm going to ask or say. I just want to know, how can you offer out a little bit of these teachings that you did through Awakening Joy? If you could give us a little of the remedy maybe, or offer out a little more joy. Maybe you don't have to do anything at all, but thank you.
Well, thank you, Chris. That's very inspiring. Maybe I'll teach that class again, because it's certainly just talking and thinking about joy increases your joy. And Chris, you mentioned the most important phrase, which is the very first thing that James recommends, which is incline the mind towards joy. And when you were going to that playground and open to the joy of those children instead of in your own head, but being open to their joy, and anytime you can walk a labyrinth, I've been getting into that. There are labyrinths hidden all over the place. But, just like I have all the time I need, that phrase, incline the mind towards joy, it can return us to that intention to, some of us really need to look for joy, especially if we have a tendency towards melancholy or depression. We have to remind ourselves that just as there are reasons to be depressed and alarmed, there are always reasons also to be joyful and hopeful, and so thank you for reminding me of that phrase, incline the mind towards joy.
I'm just going to offer out your three breaths. Again, like I said, I work as a nurse, and often in triage, I get very manic patients coming or just couldn't even tell me their name, much or less. And now it's on the phone, which is an even more difficult kind of a relationship. Mm-hmm. And added to these three large breaths actually increase your parasympathetic hormones, and it decreases your sympathetic hormones. And when I'm on the phone, or even for myself, when I'm taking these three breaths, I actually take the palm of my hand and put it on my heart. Mm-hmm. And that actually stimulates not only your parasympathetics, but oxytocin secretion from your vagus nerve, which is the hormone that brings milk down from the breast. It's hugging a baby. During our meditation, someone had a cat on his shoulder here, and I was like, wait, close up. We shouldn't see this. And then I got really off on just watching his relationship hugging this cat online. Anyway, this is very helpful. And usually if a patient's very manic on the phone, I have them put their hand to their chest, take some deep breaths with me, and about a minute, it just knocks them out, generally out of whatever delusional state they may be in at that moment. So I just offer that out.
Well, thank you for adding that on, because I was wondering if you actually had the person on the other end of the line do the same thing. And, with kids, when a child is really sobbing and upset, that's the best thing you can do is put your hand on their heart and breathe with them. And I know that people who do hospice, when they start doing hospice work, they think, well, what can I say and do for this person who's dying? And often just breathing with another person is an offering in itself. But thank you for all the science around that. That was terrific. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Joe.
I want to add my voice to the chorus of thanks. It's very timely. And operate in the world mostly as an artist, but I'm also in higher education. Mm-hmm. And I'm now chair of my department, UC Berkeley, and the wonderful faculty is almost competitive about how busy they are. It's like a badge of honor and a distinction to be as, insanely busy and everywhere and giving lectures and things. And so I've been trying to introduce, little lumps of clay into the works, to sort of, to be embodied, to do something where we use touch, or we think about our bodies and our breath, just at the beginning of a meeting and maybe at the end. And it's difficult work. It's missionary work. I feel like they're looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? And this is really encouraging for me to hear. It supports me in this mission. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That's a wonderful offering you're making in that setting. I recently went to Sea Ranch, and I didn't know anything about Sea Ranch, and I read up on Lawrence and Anna Halprin and how they would have these gatherings of architects and dancers, and the architects were not in their bodies, and that was something that the dancers could help them get in touch with. And it just delighted me to think of these dancers and architects prancing around together in the beautiful redwoods of Northern California. Thank you for that. And, it is getting more mainstream, mindfulness. There's a lot of mindfulness in elementary classrooms now, and in fact, Grisha, I don't know if you ever ring a bell and have your little ones breathe, but kids are really capable of that too. Hi, Jeff. Good to see you.
Hi, yes, good to see you. It opens my heart when I know you're going to be here, because you always have such heartwarming talks. I loved your list. It's just a sort of like the way to deal with the first noble truth, to try and find the peace and the ease, and having time for 3 breaths is so true, And another one I'm particularly fond of is washing the dishes. When in doubt, wash the dishes. But a friend of mine told me when you lose your center, focus on what you're doing with your hands. Mm-hmm. On what you're doing with hands. And one of my favorites is instead of high tea, I have high coffee in late afternoon. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jeff. I understand that a good antidote to panic attacks is to look down at your feet on the ground. See yourself, to look down at your feet, and also to remind yourself, here's another great mantra, I'm all right right now. Right now, I'm all right. Because so much of a panic attack or anxiety is future tripping. So thank you for reminding me of that. Someone else? I think we have a few more minutes. Jim.
Hey, good to see you. As always, part of the projects of this past shutdown was that I learned shorthand in high school, so it's been easy for me to take daily accounts of my life. So I went back over 45 years worth of my days, and I've been shockingly busy. I just scandalized myself. I was so, I was just like, Mr. Yes, sure. And now when I look at my meditation practice, I have an enormous prayer list. So I'm even just, I've taken this ambitious busyness into my meditation practice. So as usual, I find your talks very illuminating and helpful and well organized. And I'm doing the newsletter article in September, and I'm going to do your article because it's so well organized and so helpful. And even guys in prison who are mainly our readers can take a lot from this frame of mind.
Oh, Jim, that makes me very happy. Thank you for that.
No, it's just a great offering to us all. So thank you. It's wonderful to see you again. Thank you.
Mike, did you want to say something, Mike? or were you just offering a thumbs up?
I would like to say, in all honesty, I'm not particularly comfortable sort of like offering feedback to a group on Zoom, but I found what you had to say so engaging and charming, and it just awakened at least half a dozen points that I know are going to be sort of like just on the edge of my consciousness that I'm going to remember and either do for myself and bring myself some peace and certainly pass on to the people that I work with. So thank you. I found your presentation today to be quite a gift.
Thank you, Michael. That means a lot to me. Well, I think that's all the time we have. I thank you so much for inviting me back. And I love visiting with you. I miss being with you in person. I love the space that you have and the serenity of your center. And I look forward to returning there with you at some time in the not too distant future. So thank you for having me back.
We will look forward to having you there for sure. Thank you very much. Do we have any announcements today? Anyone? I think we're taking our 3 deep breaths right now. No.
Well, Joe, before everybody showed up, someone was talking about the possibility of a retreat. I don't remember who that was or what it was exactly, but that might be a good thing to bring up to the group.
That was me, Jerry. Mm-hmm. We're looking possibly to do a retreat in November at Land of the Medicine Buddha. But stay tuned.
Uh-huh.
That's good.
Jerry, where is that center?
SoCal, near Santa Cruz.
Okay.
The Tibetan retreat center.
Mm-hmm.
We usually go to Vajrapani, but they're not going to open now till 2022. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would like to remind everyone about Dana and keeping the Sangha going and keeping us vital and energized and alive and supporting our many projects. I will take us through a little closing then, if there are no more. Let's imagine that we're standing in the circle and holding hands and having that moment of seeing each other and feeling the community, and then listen to these words. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks and goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.